Hey, welcome to this radio video, and this is another video for QSL cards. So my full collection of QSL cards is going to be online. So if something happens, what's cool is that I'll actually have something online to remember these cards by. First one for WWV, yes, the time signal in the United States for a report that I sent for 15 megahertz on February 1983. Nice little QSL card. I have fond memories of this card because, first of all, I like the card for some reason. And what I found interesting also is that they gave out back then a nice big booklet. I believe it was like 20 or 30 page. And it would explain WWV, where they were when they started, the reason why they existed, and all sorts of detail about time and the time codes in the transmissions. Really interesting, and I'm kind of a tech science guy, so it was really cool to have information about why this station existed. It wouldn't occur to me, when you're 13, 14 years old, you don't understand why they have time stations. But then you read that book and say, oh, okay, it does help. And today, WWV is a great station, not just for the accuracy of time, but also to make calibration of your receivers, for example. If you want to see if they're off frequency, you can tune one of the WWV signals. You know that those are pretty much on frequency with a very, very high precision. So you can adjust your receiver. An example of that was my Kenwood R5000 at with time would drift slightly, and I remember there was a little pot, a little resistor, if you want, in the radio that you could adjust. And actually I would open the cover when it was when it was off, and I would adjust with a plastic screwdriver, because if you use a metal screwdriver, it can change the value because of the metal. It has an interaction in receivers. And I would adjust until the tones were exactly right, put back the cover, and I'd be okay for a year and a half before I'd do it again. WWV, Fort Collins, Colorado time signals for a card on in 1983. So here's the back of the card. 15 megahertz, 1516 UT, 22 February 83. Serial number for the card, so there was actually a serial number on this card. And so US Department of Commerce, really cool. Another time signal now, which is CHU Canada. CHU Canada, transmitting on, it's the Canadian time signal, transmitting on 3.330, 7.850. and 14.670, and so this card is for the 3330 frequency. Kind of lets me think that it would have been nice to have one of 7335, because they were before on 7335, but because of change in frequency planning, they actually had to move to utility band of 7850. And if we look at the back of the card, nothing much except somebody just with a pencil underlined the frequency I was listening to, and that's about it. I don't know the frequency. A little bit of detail here, and they also had a very nice booklet about time, why it's important to have precision, accuracy in time, and also some details about the time code that they use in their signal. So CHU for a report that was probably somewhere in the early 80s. Here is a little more exotic. This one, Radio 4 VEH. This is an Haiti station. The only station from Haiti that I've ever heard, and they used to come in with quite a good signal on the 60-meter tropical band back in 1984, as you see here. So Radio 4 VEH February 1st, 1984, 0239, 4930 kilohertz. And I'd listen to this station many evenings because it was so exotic to hear station from Haiti on the tropical band. And I believe they still exist today for VH, but they're in medium wave AM only. And I think they use 800 kilohertz, if I'm not mistaken. I'll have to look it up, but I think 4VH is now a medium wave or maybe even an FM station only. Transmitter, basically these stations had almost no money, so what happened is when their transmitter broke down, they just didn't have money to buy spare parts, and they would leave shortwave because of that. So if we look at the back here, radio 4 VEH for report at 0239 on in 1984, 4930 kilohertz frequency, and Mrs. Biki, QSL secretary. 4VH evangelistic station. They would have, of course, religious programming, but they would also have, and that was one of the things that I find funny, game show-like programs in French. And most of the programs were in French with a little bit of Creole, but a lot of it was in French though. And so this is one of those rare cards that I'm really fond of because can't have those today. Another one that's quite nice from Venezuela. This one is Radio Barquisimeto, Venezuela, on 4990. Back in the 80s, this station 4990 and Ecos del Torbes on 4980, they were powerhouse signals up here in Montreal. I remember hearing these stations quite well with their very fast talking Spanish that I didn't understand a word. I actually wrote these stations in English, even though thinking, well, I hope somebody understands. I don't know if anyone understood, but at least they sent me a card back. That was quite cool. So this is Barquisimeto, Venezuela. And if we look here in the back, very nice. Here is what my old address back then. Even the stamps. So the card was sent like this. I didn't have an envelope, as you can see here. And it says frequency, time. It says it's local time here. This is local time and not UTC. And correcta, meaning the report was okay. And they sent me this card directly by mail like this, with the stamps here, Venezuelan stamps. Pretty cool. So these were the cool stations that you could hear. Still hear a lot of tropical stuff if you have low noise. The problem is that the noise level back then in the 60-meter band was much lower, almost inexistent. So you could hear quite easily even weak stations that are today almost impossible to go through. I know here the 60-meter band is very noisy, S9 or S8 noise. While back then the noise was maybe S3 or S4, it's much lower. So, hope you enjoy these videos. 73.